Hello, my name is Alicia. I'm talking about Reflection Assignment 5, which is going over long-term memory again. And this first video is talking about how memories can be impacted by emotions. And something that came up really early was flashbulb memories. What are flashbulb memories? Well, flashbulb memories are basically when someone can remember something super vividly and as if it were yesterday because of an event that took place that day. And an example that was used in the video is the World Center destruction from the planes of 9/11. Something to remember though is that these really vivid memories can be subject to error. These memories are remembered with high confidence, but that doesn't mean that they're accurate. And, well, we saw this when we were in class with the case of the woman who was sexually assaulted and thought that she could identify the man that assaulted her and falsely accused someone who of doing the act, but it wasn't correct, obviously. That's an example of a traumatic memory. And I guess you can also associate the World Trade Center, 9/11, being traumatic. But also world leaders and their deaths are seen as flashbulb memory type, just because people can, feel so connected with that day and all of the content of the day that it feels like there are no errors and that there's nothing that could have gone wrong with their recollection of this memory. Something else that was talked about in this video was the fact that with knowing what happened on the day that, said event occurred, there's a chance of, hearing from other people their experience of what happened, which could mingle with what you remember happening that day. And if you break it down into pieces, you know that through your endogenous attention of that day, or exogenous, because you're taking in the information, that's bottom up processing. You'll go back into your long-term memory, take out what you know to be happening to help you understand the situation better. And depending on how intense the memory is or the event is, it must be intense because it's a flashbulb memory, then you must, take a lot of attention into what you're consuming, which will go into your long-term memory. And well, that goes back into, taking in information and bringing out memories or knowledge of past experiences, which is why I brought up endogenous attention earlier. Now, I am, fortunate to not have gone through any really traumatic experiences, but when I was younger, around 2009, I do remember where I was when I heard that Michael Jackson had passed away. I really didn't connect it. I didn't really hurt or feel so sad about his death because I wasn't really old enough to understand. But I remember it being really big. It was huge news. And I was in a barbershop with my mom. I don't remember why, but I remember that I was there and there was a whole drum set and all of these details that I really wouldn't remember if it were any other memory. But I think that there is truth to this because I know that because I was young, that a lot of what I saw, my perception, my perspective on what I saw is mine. So there's truth in it, but it's also likely that there are errors because I share this memory with my mother and what she remembers may not be so similar to what I remember. And I'm more likely to maybe agree with what my mom says because I'm very heavily influenced by my mom. as most people are. So that aside, that is the memory in association with emotion. Emotions can heavily impact how you remember your emotions. It can work both ways, whether it is you remembering it in more detail or you being clouded by your emotions and not giving as much attention to a situation as you normally would. Moving on. Video 2. People really fall for a lot of misinformation nowadays. And why is that? Well, there's an example in this video where the sensory map of the tongue was false and it traveled all over the world from Germany because people misunderstood the German language and included some things that were not so true as far as like what part of the tongue can sense particular tastes and things. News outlets alike all decided to agree that the information that was being spread was correct and nobody wanted to like be wrong, and so they agreed and said, yes, this is true and we all agree with it, so there's credibility attached. What we also found was the diagrams that were spread all over the world were so much simpler than the complex version that originated in Germany and from Dr. Henning. So because it was so easy to like actually interpret, people love when things are simple and hate when things are complex, and so why make things harder? Accept that things are simple, even if they're wrong. That is what humans do. We strive to make things less complicated. What's even worse is that once humans have an idea of something, it's really hard to change their minds. And bringing up the unfortunate story of the woman that got raped. When she saw the new evidence for the abuser, she doubled down on her false claim or her inaccurate accusation, because there was just no way in her mind that she could be wrong when she took the time to identify this man and take note of everything she saw. And it was a dark night. And humans do this every day. And for less traumatic experiences. And this just goes to show that humans and, just human people, there's no other way people in general definitely need to better understand what it is that they're looking at through researching, taking the time to look things up and read articles that are peer reviewed and based on factual information and not just things that they feel are true. Like confirmation bias. The way that you search for things on the internet can give you what you're looking for and not exactly what the truth may be. And when you have something that's stuck in your brain, right? You gave a lot of attention to it. And because you gave so much attention to it, it's really hard to take something out of your long-term memory. You've done what it takes to get it there, to have it stuck, to remember it, constant recall, and bringing it back to your attention for the repetition. I can understand that it's not so easy to be wrong. People don't like to be wrong. Why would you be so happy about being incorrect? It leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And not just in the back of your mouth like the video suggested, but all over, because you're wrong. And it's important to keep a healthy level of skepticism when it comes to learning new information from peers and from sources that are unbeknownst to you, and in addition to unbeknownst to you, sources that you rely on to keep them held accountable. Third video is talking about if your memories are real and how can you know. There was a study that showed that people remembered getting lost in a shopping mall and not knowing where their parents were and being found by a man in a red, what do they call it? Flannel shirt. Not familiar with styles. Nothing, doesn't matter. The weird part is that it didn't happen. People just remember it. And a collective group, like a large group of people, remember this happening when it didn't happen. And this is like another showcase of how information that is spread from different sources can really impact the memories that you hold, especially if there's images involved. And what's more is how we feel currently can make an impact on how we view our past and like what we remember. And I can think of an example right now, which is whenever you're younger and you are being, disciplined by your parent or your guardian, and, as a child, you are so upset and regretting the experience and like wishing you would run away and pack a little suitcase full of toys because you are just so enraged at your parent. But now, as an adult, you remember something silly happening and not remembering that you were just in the worst mood ever because you were not being given what you wanted in that moment. And because so much time had passed and, so many other memories kind of flow in, they kind of take over and overwhelm that memory of, feeling upset. And now you are not really sure what you remember, but you don't think it was that bad because it wasn't that bad, was it? But it might have been, as the little you would have probably felt. And this kind of goes into familiarity. When something sounds familiar, you think that you have a memory of it or remember it from someplace. And you might make the mistake of misattributing this because what a study did for some people was give them a list of names, famous names. And on this list of names were actual people who were celebrities, big time people, but there were also names that were made up. And so they would showcase these names, and throughout they would repeat some of the names. And because the participants would have seen the name before, like in a previous showing, they have some kind of like memory of it. Like, oh, I picked up on this before, but I don't know where. And that's a prime example of misattribution. Because now the participant feels like, okay, well, since this is a list of names that are famous, I must know who it is, or this must be a famous person because this list only has famous people, right? Wrong. And that can be in your implicit memory, which is a part of long-term memory. You've got explicit, you've got implicit. And your implicit memory is unconscious. You're not aware of what you're learning in a way. It's done through automatic processing, which is basically not intending to like remember. You're just kind of remembering as the flow of data coming through enters your scope, and you just so happen to pay attention to it and are now remembering it even if you don't want to. Like when you are trying to remember something, like you're being tested and you're intentionally learning, for some words that are weird, you are not trying to learn them. You just know that they're weird, and then makes them distinct to other words that you're wanting to remember. but you just, for whatever reason, forget all of the other words and remember the word that you don't know how to pronounce or don't know the meaning of. And through seeing this information, this data, it's getting processed through your iconic store. And then because of like the attention, it's going towards your central executive, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, central executive, which then flows towards your visuospatial buffer. And that's where perception kind of flows. You attach knowledge, yes, attach knowledge, previous past experiences come through. I guess that's also where that happens in the episodic buffer. What I meant to say earlier was the visuospatial sketchpad, because the visual store allows for information to actually have meaning, and like through all of the attention had on the data that you're seeing, you can bring back memories or knowledge from long-term memory and attach it so that it's now making sense from all the past experiences. And of course, schemas and stereotypes play a role in this, because your knowledge is filled with bias and what you believe in, and that can taint how a memory is remembered. So you can unintentionally throw bias of yours to data that is being consumed by your attention, by your eyes, by your ears, so on and so forth. The last video talks about eyewitnesses getting their testimonies wrong. This, to put it short, goes into what we've been learning in our class about how people rely on what they see, but a lot of things can get in the way of what you're actually seeing. I go all the way back to the video about the woman being sexually assaulted. The woman was so certain that what she saw was truth, and it was not true. And it's a little bit frustrating how even now in like the current age, 2023, we still utilize eyewitness testimony, even though time and time again it's proven to not be so accurate. And we end up also going to DNA testing, thankfully, because otherwise a lot of innocent people would be still in prison or put on life sentences or death sentences. A man was accused of shooting somebody and in a hit and run, like a car drive-by. And the person speaking was talking about how the judge was, we wouldn't be able to really see who was in the car. And so, you know, what people really are seeing isn't accurate and could really put someone in prison, jail, worst cases, because of a false accusation. I feel like we as humans give ourselves so much credit when credit is not always due. We are wrong a lot. We have horrible eyesight. I don't understand why people trust themselves so much. But it's really important to take in all of the facts and information instead of allowing yourself to be swayed by information that isn't proven and is just told to you face up, like and not really like thought through, if you understand. If eyewitness testimony can be avoided, then please let it be avoided. That's what I think, especially because in personal situations, when, you know, a problem occurs, you wouldn't want for someone to just rely on, you know, their memory of something, because perception can definitely get in the way of what people remember. Again, perception is different. It's subjective to everybody. And, you know, mood congruent, especially because you can be feeling some kind of way, which can then affect how you see things, which can then affect how you remember them. It's all connected. And, as you go through your working memory and you are, gathering all of this information through bottom up processing, and then you're taking things back from your knowledge and your long-term memory, and then you're utilizing top-down processing, because it's endogenous attention, you are going to be wrong. And it's been proven that you'll be wrong if you utilize eyewitness testimony. And that is my video. I hope this helped. Thank you.